Hello, welcome back. This is video 3 or lesson 3 of making schematics and PCBs with KiCad. When we left off the second video, we'd finished modifying a schematic symbol for a 555 timer and saved that as our own new symbol. So we're going to pick up here with this 555 timer in the center, and let's take a look at our schematic that we're trying to build. Again, it's a continuity tester. The center is this 555 timer. So today's lesson we're going to add all the other components, show you how to add those, put the values in, and then connect them with connecting wires. Let's start with the resistors. We have 4 resistors. They're all different values. We'll add those first. Now to add a resistor symbol, we're going to go into the place symbol. It's the third icon down on the right on EE schema. So we'll click on that. Click anywhere on our sheet we want the symbol. Again, if the libraries aren't loaded, it will load those libraries. Since I had turned off the program and now come back to it, it's reloading the libraries. In the filter, I'll type in resistor, and it gives me a whole choice of resistors. I'm going to expand this out. It shows a little image of it. I like the US symbol for a resistor. So let's place that one. Let's say OK, and then we can place that wherever we want on our schematic. Before we place the second resistor, I want to specify the value of that resistor. If I hover over it and type the hotkey E for edit, then I can put a value in. If I look on my original schematic, it's a 1K ohm resistor. So I'll type 1K, hit OK. Now if I want to copy that resistor, if I click again, it will take me to my filter, but I can place another resistor faster if I just hover over it, hit C for copy, hotkey C for copy, and just place another resistor wherever I want by clicking with the mouse. Again, hotkey C for copy, and then drag and left click with the mouse wherever I want it. Notice you need to be hovered over the symbol before you hit the hotkey C. So there's 4 resistors. Now all of them are 1K, so let's go in and change the values of those resistors. R2 was 120K, so I will hover over it, hotkey E, and then 120K. At the same time, I could just label it R2. Hit OK. You can go back and edit this one and call it R1. Again, hover over it, E for edit. This will be R3, so 220 there, and R4, 10 ohms. Now again, I can move my entire sheet around if I hold the center wheel of the mouse and drag. Let's place the rest of the symbols before we start connecting wires. So the next thing I have is a capacitor, C1, and it's an unpolarized capacitor. Notice if I'm already on the place symbol, if it's highlighted, I can click anywhere on the sheet and it will load my choose symbol window, and I can type into the filter capacitor. Lots of different options for capacitors. If I go here, I have a unpolarized capacitor. That's what I want. I'll click OK. Place my symbol there. Hover over it, click E for edit. We can call this one capacitor 1. When this is checked, it means show that reference on the schematic sheet. So I'll leave that checked. And I want to specify the value, which is 0.01 microfarads. I could say 0.01 microfarads. Then I have Q1, a transistor, a 3904 NPN transistor. Click on the sheet, type in 3904, and it comes right up to it, a BJT or bipolar junction transistor, 3904. And notice these are different aliases of that transistor. So if I click on that, that's what I want. Click OK. I can place that symbol. If I want to label it Q1, I could do that, but I'm going to leave that for now. Then I have a speaker. So I'll type speaker into the filter. There's my symbol for speaker. I can place that. And I have a battery or a power supply, B1. Okay, a multiple cell battery. That's a good symbol. I will place it over here. And the only other thing we have now are 2 probe wires. So if I type in probe, I have a test point probe. Let's use that. I could create my own test probe symbol if I want, or I could just use a test probe point right here. So I'll put that one. I'm going to call that test point 1. and 2. So let's label this as test point 1. I'll again hover over it, E for edit, and I will label that test point 1. And I could not show the value of that. And then if you look at how it just prints the TP1 on the schematic sheet instead of both. Now if I hover over it and copy, I can come down here and paste, hotkey E for edit. Let's call this one test point 2, and I also won't show the value on the sheet. Now I have all my symbols and need to add the connecting wires. To add the connecting wires, go over to the right-hand menu bar and click on the Place Wire, 5th icon down. And then I always like to start from power and work around from the start of my power. So if I look at my original schematic, connected to the positive end of the battery or the power supply, first wire goes to probe 2, then coming out of probe 1 and back around. So let's do that. We'll go a wire from battery to probe 2. To place a wire, drag and then angle. It will automatically angle your wire for you. So I'm going to click again on test point 1. Coming out of test point 1, I noticed on my original schematic it connects to resistor 1. Now if I just go over the top of it, it will automatically place a connection from that wire to resistor 1. It also goes to pin 4 and pin 8. And I'm just going to continue it on. Now to end the wire, you can either double click or right click and hit end wire. I prefer to double click so it's quicker. Notice how it automatically placed the connection to resistor 1 and pin 4. Pin 8 was not there, so I'll click there and drag up a small line and connect pin 8 to test point 1. Then it goes around and connects to resistor 4 and then from resistor 4 to the speaker. So I want to move resistor 4 and 3 and kind of switch places. So I'm going to go up to my select item, okay, get my cursor. If I click and drag over any part of a symbol, I can move it. So I'll click, hold, and drag over resistor 4. Now it's movable. I can drag it wherever I want. So I'm going to drag it out to here. Then I'm going to click and drag over part of my speaker. Again, you click, left click, drag over while holding the left mouse button down, and then you can let go and move, and then it will move your symbol. I can directly connect the two connections from the speaker to the resistor, or I could leave space for a wire if I wanted to do that. So I'll leave a little space for a wire. And it's not a bad idea to move your symbols around before you connect the wires. The other end of the speaker is connected to the transistor. The base of the transistor is connected to resistor 3. So let's move that resistor 3 out of the way for a minute. Click, drag, move my transistor. I can put it ready to go to connect to the speaker. Now resistor 3 was turned, facing vertically here. I want to turn it horizontally. So if you hover over it and then hotkey R rotates, now I can select that, connect those two together. You don't always need a connecting wire. You can just place one symbol directly on another symbol's end and it automatically connects them. Now the emitter of the transistor is connected to pin 1, which is then connected to a capacitor. So I'll go place a wire again, click on place wire. I'm going to go from my emitter, let's drag it over and connect to the capacitor. So I'll double click to end the wire there. Then I'm going to select my cursor again, move this resistor out of the way, select and move my capacitor. I'll connect it right there. And then I also need a wire to connect to pin 1, so of the 555 timer. So there's pin 1 connection. Pin 2 is connected to the other side of the capacitor. So I can place a wire. Anytime you want to bend it, click and then continue to move and it will bend. So there's pin 2. Pin 6 was also connected to that side of the capacitor and the resistor, resistor 2. So if I take pin 6, place a wire there, down to the capacitor, and then I can, again, select my cursor to move resistor 2 and connect it to pin 6. Pin 7 connects to one end of resistor 2 and the other end of resistor 1. If I have my cursor selected, I can select resistor 1, move it over, and Place it there. Notice how it reconnected it to the wire that it was connected to. Again, place a wire from pin 7 to those two resistors. Next, I have the battery connected to the capacitor. So I take a wire, go from the bottom of the battery to the capacitor. Oh, and I didn't connect resistor 4 to this wire, so I'm going to click a wire there, drag there. Resistor 4 to the speaker, other end of the speaker to the transistor, and I need resistor 3 connected to pin 3. So I'm going to zoom in on that so you can see that better. So I left click my wire, left click again, move to the right, left click again, move up. That way anytime you click the mouse and then move a different direction, it will bend the wire for you. Then I can scroll back out and there's my schematic. Now on the original schematic, notice pin 5 is not shown. It has no connection. This schematic looks pretty good, but let's say the lines aren't exactly where I want them. This one has to jog over. This one from number 3 has to jog over. So let's say I want to move my lines around or move my components around. We've already mentioned that if you click and drag over a component, it will highlight it and then you can move it. Another quick way is the hotkey M. If you hover over a component, you can click M on the keyboard and it will highlight it. Let's say I want to move this bottom line. I want to straighten this line coming from pin 2 out. I can click and drag over these lines here and then pull them down, move them to where I want them. If I move them there, then I can straighten out the line from pin 2. So I'll put them there. Once I've moved my lines around, I can go back to place a wire. And notice how the end of the wire continues on and it doesn't have that square anymore. It shows you that it has a solder bridge. Again, I can place a wire from the bottom ground line to the battery and to the transistor. Now let's move this entire section further to the right. So if I highlight all of that, move it to the right, I can move it to where I can straighten out the line from pin 3. So once I've moved it, then go to place a wire and then just reconnect my wires where I need them to be. Now notice if I click and move there, I'll still have that jog, so I don't want that. Control Z takes out what I had. If I double click on the wire, clarify my selection, hit delete on the keyboard, clarify it again, and it will delete that line. Again, clarify my selection, delete that. Now I can go in and place a new wire from the resistor to pin 3. Pin 5 shows no connection on my original schematic, but that may not be a good idea. That's called a floating pin. That's usually not a good idea. So I could connect that pin to ground if I wanted. Now I've got my schematic drawn out, sketched out, or captured the way I want it to look. The next step in KiCad and EE schema and setting up my schematic is to specify each component with a different number. I can't have any components with the same number. Each has to have a unique identifier. So that's up here across the top in my workflow. I'm going to click on Annotate Schematic Symbols. And we want to annotate the entire schematic, so leave that selected. And keep existing annotations if I've already added some. For example, the resistor numbers. So let's go ahead and click Annotate. It does its job, then we'll hit Close, and you can see what's happened. It's changed from BT question mark now to BT1 for the battery, capacitor 1, Q1 for the transistor. So it puts numbers in for each of the schematic symbols. If I want to go in and change anything, I can do that as well by double clicking on any symbol and or hovering over it and hitting the hotkey E for edit. So now we've finished actually the first part of video 3. This is getting to be too long, so I'll split it into 2 smaller videos. So we'll do a video 3 part 2 and continue with the next part, an electrical rules check. But so far we've captured our schematic in KiCad. So thanks, and join me for the next part.